There's a stretch of road north of here I've driven 400 times, easy. 2 lanes, no shoulder, sagebrush out both windows. 11 miles up it, there's a line of brush standing a foot and a half taller than everything around it and still green in August. Runs a mile and a quarter, dead straight, cutting across the drainage instead of running with it. I looked at that line for 19 years and read it as nothing. A wet spot. Somewhere the water sits after a storm. It was a fault. It was a fault the whole time, and that fault is the reason anybody ever put a shovel in that country. I wasn't failing to find that ground. I was driving over it at 65, twice a month, for 19 years. Could you drive that road and tell me the one line worth stopping for? That's the whole job. Everything after it is labor. The title says every time, and I'll square that now rather than let you find out at the end and feel sold to. A line of trees is not a promise of gold. I'll put a number on it later, and you won't like it. What it gives you every single time, without exception, is direction. Which way the structures run through that district. Everything else I've got comes off that. Here's the part that turned me over, because I had it wrong for years. Most men who notice a line like that decide it's an old creek. Buried channel. Trees found the water. That's the folk explanation. It's almost never right, and you can catch it from the driver's seat. Water runs downhill. It follows low ground. It bends. It braids. That line doesn't. It runs straight. It climbs the slope. It crosses 3 drainages without acknowledging one of them. Nothing water ever did looks like that. Something in the rock did. My name's Roy, Northern Nevada, high desert, and I spent my working life as a county surveyor before I retired. I'm not a geologist and I'm not a scientist. 30-odd years of putting other men's boundaries on paper left me one habit I can't shut off. I can't look at a piece of ground without asking why it's shaped the way it is. Took me most of those years to point that habit at a row of brush. Nobody handed you this because there's no product in it. You can't sell a man a line of trees. There's an industry built on putting a detector in your hands and a map in your truck, and none of it earns $1 teaching you to read a hillside through a windshield. That isn't on you. Here's what's under that line. A fault or a shear zone is a band of rock that's been crushed. Ground moved against ground, and everything in that band got fractured, sheared, and foliated until it isn't solid rock anymore. It's rock with a grain to it and clay in the seams. So it weathers faster than the country rock beside it. Rain gets into the fractures and rots it down while the hard stuff either side barely changes. You end up with a trough of soft, deep ground and shallow ground both sides. Water sinks in and sits, and the only plants with roots long enough to reach it grow in a narrow line directly over the structure. Crushed rock, deep weathering, deep water, deep roots, one line of green. Read the line and you've mapped a fault you can't see. There's also something that happens underneath these structures that almost nobody in this hobby will explain, and it's why a vein can be dead barren where you're standing on it and worth real money not far below. I'll pay that off. I'll name my water because this doesn't travel unchanged. Where I live, there are no lines of big, healthy trees. There's sagebrush, rabbitbrush, and greasewood, and the tell is a band of brush taller and darker than its neighbors, running dead straight across a flat. In the Sierra foothills, it'll be actual trees. In Georgia, it's a difference in the timber, not the presence of it. The plant changes with the country. The rule doesn't. Something is drinking deeper than everything around it in a straight line, and straight lines in nature come from the rock. Try this tonight at your own kitchen table. Open the satellite imagery over a district you already know, somewhere you've been. Get down to about 1,000 feet on the view and look for green that doesn't bend. Once you've found one line, you'll find 40. That's the scouting method, and it's the cheapest there is. From the truck, you want 2 things. Taller and greener, in a hard-edged band you could rope off. From above, it's the same, except the straightness jumps out the way it never does at ground level. And do it in the dry season. In April, everything's green and everything lies to you. In late August, the only things still green are drinking from down deep. Now, what to do when you've got one? Don't walk the line. Walk both sides of it. That sounds backward, and it's the most useful thing I've got. The big structure is often the poorest ground there. These things don't come alone. A major shear zone almost always has smaller ones running subparallel to it, 40 feet off, 200 feet off, sitting quiet with no vegetation signature because they're too narrow to grow anything. Some of those side structures are the rich ones. The line gives you the orientation, and the orientation tells you where to hunt the others. So you park and walk parallel, hunting quartz float, loose vein quartz that came out of something and rolled downhill a little way. You want iron staining on it, that rusty orange-brown, meaning sulfides were in there once and have broken down. Clean white sugar quartz is pretty and mostly means nothing. Rusty, boxy, honeycombed quartz means something was in it. Walk uphill until the float quits. That's roughly where it came from. And widen out what you're reading, because this isn't only about lines. A change in plant type means a change in soil type, and a change in soil type nearly always means a change in the rock underneath. That's not folklore, it's how dirt works. The rock rots into the soil the plants live in. So when the brush changes species, or thins to bare pavement, you've crossed a contact. You've mapped geology with your eyes, at walking speed, for nothing. Same physics as the wash, running the other way. Gold is 19 times the weight of water and 6 or 7 times the gravel around it, which is why it quits the instant moving water loses energy. But a wash is the tail end of that story. The structure is the start of it. Read the line and you're walking at the source, not waiting on leftovers. Now the thing I've been holding. Rain soaks down into the fractured zone. Pyrite in the quartz stringers breaks down as it goes, and what it breaks down into is iron and sulfuric acid. That acid keeps working downward, stripping the vein. And where the groundwater is heavily saline, which in a lot of desert country it is, the chlorides mobilize gold out of the vein entirely, carry it down, and drop it back out in a concentrated zone below. That's supergene enrichment. The gold didn't leave. It went down and got richer on the way. That zone can run ounces to the ton, sometimes multiples of it, while the quartz sitting directly above has been leached so hard you'd be lucky to pan 2 colors out of it. Read that back. A barren outcrop is not evidence there's nothing there. Under the right chemistry, it's evidence of the opposite. Something took the gold out of that rock and put it somewhere, and somewhere is down. The old boys hit that enrichment and mostly didn't know why, and plenty walked off a leached cap thinking they had a dud. They were fast, not thorough. The difference is still sitting there. Straight about the odds, because the men who won't be are the reason I bother with this. Roughly 7 times out of 10, a tree line is nothing worth digging. A soil change, a stock pond leak, a structure with no mineralization in it. Anybody selling you one as a sure thing is lying, and he's lying because the real article is rarer and worth far more than the story he's selling. But the 3 times it isn't nothing, it's a source. Not colors in a pan, a source. That's the find of a season and sometimes of a career. And it goes to the man who read the ground, not the man who bought the map. I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one, and the rules where I live have changed twice since I started. Take this as the shape of it and go get the current version yourself. Know what you're standing on. 4 land statuses, and they aren't interchangeable. Federal ground under the BLM or the Forest Service, state ground, private ground, and actively claimed ground. That last one catches people, because open public land and unclaimed land are 2 different things. A structure good enough to grow trees over it has been looked at before. Assume it's claimed until the record says otherwise, and the record is the county recorder and the federal claim database, not a forum post. Then know what you're doing, because that's 3 separate legal categories almost everywhere. Hand panning is one. Non-motorized sluicing is a second. Anything motorized or suction-based is a third, and that one needs permits in most places. Picking loose float off the surface sits differently again from chipping a vein in place, and differently again from putting a hole in the ground. Before you put a shovel anywhere, pull the current rules from the district office covering that ground. This year's, not the ones you remember. Safety, and I'm no doctor and won't pretend otherwise. If a structure is any good, somebody's already been on it, which means old workings along it. Adits, shafts, winzes, rotten timber, bad air you can't smell. Do not go in. Not for a look, not for 10 feet. People die in those every year, and they die quietly. The other is heat and distance. A long way from the truck, no signal, in the season the ground reads best, which is also the season that kills people. Water, a hat, and somebody at home who knows the road you took. Breaking rock, eye protection, every time. Dry clay and dust is silica, and a bandana is not a respirator. And the first one again, because it matters most. Never enter an old working. The gold isn't in there anyway. So, taller, greener, straight, crossing the drainage, not following it. Late summer, not spring. Truck window first, satellite second. Walk both sides, not the line. Iron-stained float, not clean white. Uphill until it quits. Plant change means soil change means rock change. And a barren cap is not a verdict. 4 things to look for, and not one of them costs $1. All of it happens before you ever pick up a shovel. One job this weekend. Saturday, before you go anywhere. 10 minutes with satellite imagery over the last place you prospected. Look for green that doesn't bend. Mark it and put your eyes on it next trip. That line 11 miles up the road. I finally walked it 2 years ago. Took an afternoon. Iron-stained float on the low side for 200 yards, and the structure it came off wasn't the line at all. Narrow thing about 90 feet east with nothing growing on it. 19 years of driving past. 1 afternoon of walking. Tell me what state you're working, and what the plant is where you live, because it's different everywhere, and I want to know. I read every one, and the country that comes up most is the one I go deep on next. Next time, that rusty orange staining, because it's the sign everybody photographs, and about half the time, it's telling you the gold already left and went somewhere you're not standing. There's a way to tell, and it's in the shape of the holes. Eyes on the ground.